Hello, this is Shankar from System-Based Labs. I worked across regulated environments extensively and would like to share my insights on imaging platforms. Today, we are going to explore a very important topic: how validating a machine learning model is different from traditional system validation. Let's start simple by looking at the foundations. In traditional system validation, we validate against predefined logic. We know the inputs, we know the expected outputs, and we verify whether the system behaves as expected. Same input gives the same output. This is deterministic behavior. So validation becomes straightforward. Compare expected versus actual results. Now compare that with machine learning systems. Machine learning models are non-deterministic. Their behavior is not defined by rules but learned from data. So instead of validating fixed outputs, we evaluate performance across data sets. This is the fundamental shift. Now let's go one level deeper. Even in traditional systems, data is involved. But the logic is fixed. The system does not learn from data. It executes predefined rules. In contrast, ML systems are highly data dependent. The quality, diversity, and representativeness of data directly affect system behavior. So, validation must now focus on data source quality and traceability. Model performance metrics like sensitivity and specificity. Risks such as bias and model drift. We are no longer validating just logic. We are validating behavior driven by data. Now let me share my view. In traditional validation, once a system meets predefined criteria, it can be qualified. It becomes a validated system. Revalidation happens only when changes occur. So it is largely a point-in-time activity. But in machine learning systems, this changes completely. The model depends not just on initial data, but on ongoing data. As data evolves, model behavior can change. Performance can degrade. This is known as model drift. So even if a model is validated today, it may not perform the same tomorrow. This is especially important for adaptive models. So validation is no longer a one-time activity. It becomes an ongoing process, continuous monitoring, periodic revalidation, constant awareness of data changes. Now let's take it further. Validation is not just sequential, it is continuous. You don't define, then test, then document. Documentation is not a final step. It is a continuous layer across all activities. If you document at the end, you are reconstructing history. And in regulated environments, that creates audit risk. So documentation must happen while defining criteria, while executing tests, while validating datasets, while integrating into workflows. Documentation is part of validation, not separate from it. Now let me bring in my approach. My background includes working with legacy systems, COBOL, CIS, customer information and control systems, Fortran, where documentation is often minimal. In those systems, you don't rely only on documentation, you analyze behavior. And I apply the same thinking to ML systems. Because ML models are black boxes. Their logic is not explicitly written, it is learned. So I don't just ask, does the model work? I ask, where does it fail? Under what conditions does it break? What patterns drive its decisions? I probe inputs. I analyze outputs. I study failure patterns. In traditional systems, you read the logic. In ML systems, you infer the logic. That is where real validation happens. Now let's move into real audit scenarios. These are the kinds of questions auditors or regulators may ask. Question 1. How do you ensure the ML model is reliable? Answer. We ensure reliability through validated datasets, defined performance metrics such as sensitivity and specificity, independent test datasets, and continuous monitoring for performance stability. Question 2. How do you ensure dataset quality? Answer. We verify dataset source traceability, labeling accuracy, completeness, and diversity to ensure the model is trained and validated on representative data. Question 3. How do you handle model drift? Answer. We implement continuous monitoring of model performance, compare real-world data against validation baselines, and trigger revalidation when performance degradation is detected. Question 4. What triggers revalidation? Answer. Revalidation is triggered by changes in model, data, environment, or observed performance degradation. Question 5. How do you ensure audit readiness? Answer. By maintaining continuous documentation, traceability across all validation steps, and ensuring all validation artifacts are complete, consistent, and reproducible under regulatory expectations. Question 6. How is ML validation different from traditional validation? Answer. Traditional validation verifies deterministic logic against predefined outputs, while ML validation evaluates probabilistic behavior driven by data and requires continuous monitoring due to potential drift. Now, let me leave you with this. Traditional systems validate logic. Machine learning systems validate behavior over time. Validation is not about proving a system works. It is about understanding where it might fail and ensuring that failure never reaches the real world. This is Shankar from System Based Labs. See you on the next training session. Goodbye.